I wanted to share some tips today about the various ink pads you may use in your stamping and how to get the best results with the ink pads. Right now what is the date? It's May 2020. And if you order classic ink pads from Stampin' Up, they're going to look like this. If you buy some old ink pads from someone or inherit them, they'll look like this. And interestingly, the ink is the same size, it's just shaped different, and how you open them is different. So any ink pads you buy new from Stampin' Up right now, they open just like a compact, and then you flip them back and slide them forward. Now these new ones can be really stiff at first, and they can be hard to open and close, and just know the more you do it, the easier it gets. So you open and slide. Now you can see my ink pad has green there as well as a label there. They don't come like that. You have to put those on. So on, and the other thing, make sure you close it tightly. On the back of your ink pad, when you get it and open it, there's these little strips. Now I've already used 2 of them. This is different languages. But you would take your strip off and you put the label on one end. I did the English version. And then there's another plain label. That's the one you can either stick in this top little panel, or you can stick it along the side. That's so when your ink pad's open and just sitting there, you don't have to go, oh, what color is that? And that's something new. Their old ink pads did not have that. I mean, you could tell that's red, but sometimes when you have a bunch of ink pads open, it is hard to tell. Okay, so that's how you do the new ones. If you happen to have inherited this older style, instead of lifting up and flipping, you push away from you and flip it towards yourself and then slide. And the reason these are all stored this way is so that your ink, it's so your ink is stored upside down without having to actually turn it over. It's just made that it's stored upside down, so when you go to stamp, you can stamp. Okay, so that's how you open those ink pads. Now there's different, another kind of ink pad you may get from Stampin' Up right now is this Memento Tuxedo Black, and the pad on this is different than the pad on those. And these are like a foam pad, and this is, I don't remember what it's called, not a foam pad. And you want to stamp differently in both kinds. So let me just show you an example. If I was going to stamp in these new ink pads, and this is the same, it's just a different, I'm going to put that one away. Okay, you want to, the old style, let me start with that one. The old style, or the canvas, I don't know what it's called, not foam, you want to push pretty hard to get a nice image. You can check and make sure it's dark. You're going to put a lot of pressure. You still don't want to rock it, because then you're going to get ink around your edges. So you want to just push nice and straight down and then stamp and hold for a second. And that usually works really well. If you rock it, let's see if I can make it do what we don't want it to do. If you rock it around in the ink pad and then rock it here, you might get these little edges. So that's what we try to avoid by pushing nice and straight. And with these kind of ink pads, it's a little harder to get those because they're not super gushy. But the new ink pads are very gushy, especially when you first get them. Now I'm going to clean this. To clean my ink, there's a lot of things you can use. I used to always use the scrub and mist, but I really like, now they sell these chamois, and I just store them in an empty stamp case. That's what they look like new. I wanted you to see what it looks like new and stiff. Once you use it once, it never looks beautiful like that again. It looks like this. It's not pretty, but I like it because I can just clean my stamps and then go wash them off at the end of the day when I'm done. And anyway, that's what I use now. Okay, so let's look at the new kind that are gushy. And somehow just opening, and you can see I've already got green on my fingers. So you want to watch out for that. I should probably wipe my fingers. Sometimes I run them along here. Okay, so If I was to push hard in there, let me first show you not pushing hard. If you kind of just tap, like firmly again, no rocking, and just some taps, you're gonna get a nice pretty thing without getting ink absolutely everywhere. But this has been used. When they're brand new, you can, if you push really hard in it, see how I've gotten ink all over my edges now? And if I push really hard there too, it still worked out, but you can see pushing hard gave me not as good of an image as not pushing hard. So obviously you don't want to push too light. If I was to push too light, then it's not going to look good either. I know. So you have to just play around when you first get inks and stamps to get the right pressure. I've learned I push not very hard, but I hold it steady and press sort of where the stamp is, and that's how I get the best image, but sometimes it's better than others. Now, when I have a ton of ink on my ink pads, it's funny, I use all kinds of things. Sometimes I just use baby wipes, which I know some people say is a no-no, but I do it. And I've done it for 20 years and my stamps have survived. So anyway, I use the Costco ones that don't have the stuff in them. Anyway, okay, so that's some tips. Don't rock, don't mash too hard. Now this is the cling mount stamps that have some foam rubber in them. I want to give you some tips if you're using, see, I did not, it's like so inky now because I pushed so hard. So why, another reason not to mash it into your ink pad. But if it's this old school kind, sometimes you have to mash it. But the new ones, you don't. They're super gushy. Okay, so that's the foam cling mount stamps. Now, you've probably seen, I'll leave that open, these photopolymer stamps that's black, so it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I have a newer one. They're clear, and they're see-through, and you just peel them off, stick them on your blocks, and then put them back in. So I'm using this image because I wanted to give you a tip for when you have a bold image. If you're just doing like a line image, so here's this Happy Mother's Day, I can just stamp here. Again, I'm not going to push hard and get ink everywhere, but I still got ink. Now I'm just going to be careful here not to push and get it. So I didn't need to put anything under to get a pretty image, but when it's bold like this, if I just stamp here, and especially if you stamp and then go fast, it's not very pretty. I don't even know if you guys can tell, but it's not the greatest. This is very inky, but one thing that helps is if you put a foam pad underneath. This is a piercing mat. Stampin' Up! Only is selling them for till the end of May. I love them. I don't know. I wish they would keep selling them. But here when you push it, now if it's a brand new stamp, you can like see the ink go through everywhere. Anyway, it gives you a slightly better image. It may be kind of hard to tell there, but trust me, it does do, it's better. So if you don't have anything kind of foam spongy like that, even having a magazine or a catalog underneath it versus a hard table, when it's a bold image like that, it's just going to give you a better picture. Now, let's see, let's try the tulip with and without this foam mat. Okay, so it's okay. This one is a distinctive stamp, I believe, that's meant to have multiple shades come in it. But I'm just going to guess it could be my ink pad sort of dry, which I should show you how to refill them while I'm talking about ink pads. But I think it's hard to tell. They're not side by side. It is going to give me a better image if I have this underneath. So when I'm using photopolymer and I have anything but just a straight greeting, I will usually try to have a foam mat underneath because it's just a prettier image. Here's a couple cards I made with these tulips. That's with the wish. You can see how it's just so nice and even. There's that thanks. So the foam mat helps when you're using photopolymer bold images. And then the key is don't mash into your ink pad. And if it's this harder kind, then you can press a little harder, but just play around with your stamps. And then let me show you this one. Again, these new ones are a little harder to open and close. I wish it wasn't so, but it is. Let me show you how to refill an ink pad. So when I get an ink pad, I always buy the refill, but I use mine at classes, so they get a lot of use. Yours will definitely last longer than mine. But when I need to refill them, I just bring my ink in and I just kind of start, and I mean, you don't want to get too much, but I just sort of squeeze as I run over it. I know this may be obvious to people, but that'll show you how I smear it around. This one's nice because you can see exactly where you've put ink and where you haven't. Now, after you re-ink them, they are going to be really dark at first. Then I just take an extra clear block. This is also why I keep baby wipes by me, so I can clean this kind of thing off. And I just smear that ink into the pad around. And of course, I'm going to get it all over my thing. I don't know where my pad went. So let's see, this is what I was doing in yellow. Let's see what kind of image we get now. My other tip, yeah, it's definitely darker. And sometimes it may be darker than you want at first. And you just have to wait for the ink to subside a little, or you can, sometimes if I go way overboard and put too much ink, I will take a piece of paper like this background and just sort of rub my hand across it. Whoa, see, I did put a lot of ink and it takes off some of that ink. Now my table's gonna turn yellow, but that's why I bought this old desk off of Craigslist. It can get dirty. And then it's, you see, we still get darker than that, but not as inky as at first. So there's some tips for that. I was gonna tell you guys one more thing, but I forgot. I remember what my tip was going to be. This is when you first open, you first get a stamp out of the box and put it on your block. Sometimes it might have like dust or fuzz or something on it, and your first image is just never going to be as pretty as your second, in my experience. So whenever you're stamped the first time, I just always recommend you stamp once on your background to get your ink pad going or get your stamp cleaned off, make sure there's nothing stuck to it, and then go stamp on the project you're working on. So that was my tip. Thanks. I'm back yet again. One more thing I forgot to talk about was these little Stampin Spots. In the new catalog, you can buy a set of these. It's a way to get a bunch of colors without having to invest in the big stamping pads. And also, if you're a Paper Pumpkin subscriber, this is how they come. I put all my stamps away already, so let me grab one out. Obviously, if you're using a little stamp, you would just stamp in it like any ink pad. Now, these are not the foamy ink pads, so they're more the old school kind that I can't remember what they're called. But if I have a big stamp and I'm using a little ink pad, instead of running across like this is just my personal preference. I like to hold the ink pad. And here with these little ones, now mine's old. If you have a gushy new one, you don't have to press. I do kind of press hard and I twist a little bit as I do it. I don't know why. I guess over time, that's what I thought would work. I'm going to do it once here because, like I said, your first ink one is not as good. Now, this is an older ink pad. It may not be as rich as a new one would be, but that's okay. It's what I had sitting on my desk to show. So let's see if we get a better image here with our photopolymer, and you can see how, or my foam mat, I'll push and hold and I get a better image. So that's how you use the little ink spots.